Death Battle YouTubers Nemesis and Biffweed are some of my favorite content creators on YouTube right now, and a while back they did some Smash and TF2 and PlayStation All-Stars Death Battle videos, finding an opponent for all of those characters. And I thought I should do the same with JoJo, just because I don't think we get enough JoJo ideas for Death Battle. We've got some good ones, but what if we got an idea for every character in Eyes of Heaven? That'd be pretty neat. I'm going to be laying out the same rules Biffweed did in his original video. No same series fights, no characters that have already appeared or are confirmed for Death Battle, and I can only use the same series twice on this list. With that aside, let's get on with the video. Right off the bat, we have what's probably my most wanted match on this list, Jonathan Joestar vs Tanjiro Kamada from Demon Slayer. Humble and honorable shonen protagonists who wield a sword and can also harness the power of the sun through breathing styles. Their backstories involve their family getting killed, their sibling turning into a bloodthirsty monster, and them getting defeated by the main antagonist and having their bodies taken over by them. Apparently this fight is really close, since Tanjiro has better attack potency and slightly better durability, but Jonathan is way faster, has a better healing factor, and his versatility would allow him to fuck up Tanjiro's own breathing styles. It also has potential to be one of the most visually and musically stunning fights in the entire series, since both franchises are praised for their art style, colors, and music. I'd love for this one to be hand-drawn, but it'd probably end up being a break fight. That sucks. William Zappelli vs Ra's al Ghul from DC Comics. I couldn't find any actual matchups for William at the time of writing this that were anything other than a Zappelli Battle Royale, but I made this one up and it seems to work pretty well. They're both wise and experienced mustachioed martial artists who discovered a phenomenon that turns people into violent and undead monsters and dedicate their life to pursuing it. And if we want to include the Batman Begins continuity, then they also trained the protagonist. It's actually a pretty close fight too, since Will is slightly above Ra in most physical states, but Ra has better intelligence and experience, given the fact that he's practically immortal. Don't have a lot to say about it on who I think wins. It could probably go either way, but it's a nice matchup. Robert E.O. Speedwagon vs Maze Hughes from Full Metal Alchemist, the goofy and lovable ally to our main protagonist who is loyal to a fault and is considered by many to be the fan favorite of their series. I can't tell if this is a joke fight or not, but at the same time it's the best matchup for each of them. Dio Brando vs Shin from Fist of the North Star, asshole blonde stepbrothers with superiority complexes who made life hell for their rival protagonist, stole their girl, and was killed after falling off a balcony at their castle. If you ask me, this is a more fair fight than Jotaro vs Kenshiro, since Dio has some insane regeneration and his vaporizing freeze works as a great passive defense. If the fight doesn't end with the two of them fighting mid-air after they fell off of whatever tower they were fighting on, then why bother making it? Joseph Joestar vs Big Boss from Metal Gear Solid. Strategic fighters who mastered both weapons and hand-to-hand combat from training under their motherly mentor figures. This seems to be Joseph's best matchup after Edward Elric, who is already on Death Battle, which is fine with me since I really don't care for that one, even if the 1 minute melee was phenomenal. An author on the Death Battle fandom wiki wrote a battle between the two, and said that Big Boss wins, but they also ignored that Joseph has faster-than-light dodging feats, so I think that might not be accurate.
Caesar Zappelli vs Iori Yagami, King of Fighters. Rivals to an alliteratively named protagonist whose bloodlines are connected by fate, with their own bloodlines being cursed so that their heirs die young. Also to Water vs Fire and Red vs Blue match, very nice. Originally Caesar was going to fight Ken, but then I forgot Ken was on Death Battle, so just ignore the next part.
Lisa vs Rose, also from Street Fighter. Martial artists who mastered a life energy power and used their scarf as a weapon in combat. Rose was also directly based off of Lisa, so I guess it's like Deadpool vs Deathstroke. I don't really have a lot to say about this one. Rose probably wins since we don't have a whole lot to go off of for Lisa. I personally prefer Lisa vs Azumi Curtis, but I already used my second Full Metal Alchemist character on Rudolf von Stroheim vs Frank Archer from Full Metal 2003. Soldiers wanting to make a name for themselves as war heroes who returned after death as a cyborg to keep serving their country. I don't really know who wins, I've never seen Full Metal 2003, and I just wanted Stroheim to find a matchup that wasn't just a robot whose sole purpose was to kill. I wanted something that actually had meaning to it. Cars vs Meruem from Hunter x Hunter. highly intelligent anime antagonists who are considered the peak of evolution and view mankind as lesser beings with no purpose other than to be eaten, and in their super forms they can replicate the powers of other living things. I really like this matchup, and I have no idea how Death Battle is going to handle it. In terms of their own abilities, Meruem has massive advantages in terms of like raw power, speed, durability, and shit, but also doesn't have any resistance to being absorbed since Nen doesn't have the same properties as Hamon, and there also seems to be a disagreement over whether or not Ultimate Cars can develop Nen. I'm in the camp that says he can, mainly because it's a biological function of Chimera Ants, especially of Meruem's generation. If Cars gets Nen, then he wipes Meruem off the face of the earth, and if he doesn't, then Meruem does the same to him. Wamuu versus Iskandar from Fate. Honorable warriors of ancient times who fight with the power of storms, wind, and lightning. They are also chariot riders and can summon an army of fallen comrades. Apparently Wamuu's best match? I honestly don't know anything about Fate, but Brandon Yates made a track for this matchup and it's a banger. Oh yeah, Wamuu loses because he gets battlefield removed to Desert Wasteland. GG's, guys. AC/DC versus Manaroth from World of Warcraft. I don't know anything about WoW, but this seems to work. They are ancient warriors, they are cunning and brutal, they serve as a second in command to their group, and they have flammable blood. That's it. Noriaki Kakyoin versus Pure Nikos from Ruby. These smart and irrational red-headed members of a team who never had a chance to make friends due to their strange and extraordinary abilities growing up, and died before their time against the main villain. This is widely regarded to be the Kakyoin fight. I get the appeal and connections, but I also kinda like Kurama from Yu Yu Hakusho a bit more. The reason I didn't put that one is because it's too much of a stomp and Kakyoin doesn't deserve that. Jean-Pierre Polnareff versus Jeanne d'Arc from Fate. French swordsman named John with a strong moral compass on what's right and wrong. Not a lot of connections. It's another Fate character and I don't know a whole lot about that. Arc probably wins because Silver Chariot's only advantage is being faster, unless they include a Chariot Requiem, then they kinda just Dr. Doom the whole situation. I think it'd be pretty funny if they played with Polnareff being a horrible flirt in this fight, since I've read Arc gets really flustered if a guy so much as looks at her. I think this could be a fun fight, not super fair, not super interesting, but it could be fun. Old Joseph Joestar versus Indiana Jones. Old Joseph Joestar is just Indiana Jones but anime. I don't really need to explain this one, and I don't really care about it. Old Man Logan from Marvel is probably more fair and probably more interesting, but this introduces the new series and has a bit more connections as far as I know. Muhammad Abdul versus May and Blaziken from Pokemon. Do I really need to explain this one? Abdul versus Blaziken has always been a bit of a meme fight, but I honestly couldn't be bothered to find something better for him. But adding May or any Gen 3 trainer would definitely make this fight more interesting, like Red and Charizard versus Tai and Agumon. And since Blaziken actually has a trainer this time, he can turn into Mega Blaziken without breaking continuity. Do I know who wins? Nope. Do I care? Nope. Iggy versus Koromaru from Persona 3. Dogs who can summon their spirit in battle. One's a selfish asshole and the other's the symbol of selflessness. Not a lot of connections, but Iggy also doesn't have a lot of matchups that make a whole lot of sense. So, take what you can get, dude. Whole Horse versus Zora Salazar from Epithet Erased. Funny bounty hunting villain cowboys who can control the movements of their bullets. This is Whole Horse's most interesting matchup besides Arthur Morgan, which is just so what the fuck that it becomes interesting. Zora apparently moves her bullets by controlling the time of her bullets, like what point in time they are, and how fast or slow they can move within time. A lot of interesting potential with that, especially since Zora works alone and Whole Horse tries to work with two people. Maybe he tries to convince her to join and then they duel? Whole Horse runs away and she just rewinds him back to where he is? That'd be funny. Endul versus Katara from Avatar. They control water with seeming elegance but with powerful force. Endul has nothing to work with. Toph would have worked better since she's another blind elemental manipulator, and Geb is named after the Egyptian god of Earth, but she's already been in Death Battle, so you get this abomination instead. Mariah versus Kenji Hikishishi, I think that's how you pronounce it, from My Hero Academia. Women who can affect the magnetic pull of other people, and who often get confused for someone else. Mariah gets confused for that ugly old hag, and Kenji gets confused for being a man. The powers are pretty similar, though Kenji's works by making people of the opposite gender attract towards one another, while Mariah's just kinda makes everything attract towards one another. So I guess Mariah wins because she's not as held back. I don't know, it's something. Pet Shop versus Anavia from League of Legends. cryokinetic birds, one being a violent harbinger of death and the other a benevolent spirit that brings life. This was originally Pet Shop vs. Cerno, but then I found this one on Google Images and I thought, yeah, that works better. I don't have anything else to say except Pet Shop gets his beak kicked in again.
Vanilla Ice vs. Walken from Bao. Terrifyingly unhinged villains created by Hirohiko Araki who can destroy matter with psychic spheres. Ice erasing it through a black hole, and Walken vibrating molecules to the point that solids liquefy and disintegrate. Ice once again didn't have a lot of interesting matchups to work with, but I personally really like this one. The connections are pretty surface level, with the one big one just being that they share the same author, but they feel like the same character with just how horrifying they are in combat. Like, I know they're not the same, but they just feel the same. Just two masses of muscle approaching each other with murderous intent in their eyes. Oh, and go check out Bao the Visitor by Hirohiko Araki, it's fucking incredible.
So, all of the good Josuke matchups were either taken, as seen with Yang and Edward Elric, or I just don't really care for them, like with Yu Narukami. So, instead what you're gonna get is Josuke Higashikata versus Fix-It Felix Jr. from Wreck-It Ralph. They're both heroes with a heart of gold with restoration powers, the son of a legendary hero, Joseph Joestar and Felix Sr., and are the foil to a villain whose power is absolute destruction. I never once thought in my life that I would compare Ralph to Yoshikage Kira, but oh well. Even though he can heal himself while Josuke can't, Felix doesn't really stand a chance in this fight because his hammer doesn't offer any offensive capabilities, and it can't be used creatively like Crazy Diamond can. So, big rip. Okuyasu Nijimura vs. Kazuma Kuwabara from Yu Yu Hakusho, the protagonist's dumb and brash delinquent best friend who can erase matter in space. Yeah, remember when I said I didn't want to put like a building tier character up against a continent one? Yeah. This is still a close match despite that, if you only want to look at the fact that they're both the same speed and both of their main abilities can negate durability altogether. Kuwabara is still gonna win, but, you know, it's still really thematic and it works. It just works. Koichi Hirose versus Sherry Belmont from Zatch Bell. Kids who start off quiet and timid, but after gaining a spiritual ally with a punk attitude to aid them in combat, the Demon Brago and the Stand Echoes, they start to grow stronger as people, with their ally gaining more abilities correlating to their personal growth, eventually mastering gravity. I think there's a lot of potential for dynamic combat with trap setting and immobilization with X2's elemental sounds and Brago's variety of gravity attacks. It'd also be wasted if no one said let's kill the hoe or mission fucking accomplished in this fight. And it's a lot better than Koichi vs. Ochako. I really can't stand that matchup. Rohan Kishibe versus Rod Serling from the Twilight Zone. Reality warping storytellers who narrate strange supernatural encounters that serve as lessons about mankind. They're also essentially self-inserts of their authors. This fight is fucking hilarious, and it works. I went for the thus spoke angle rather than the part 4 angle, but honestly, it's good. I don't know who would win, but this would make for a great episode if they ever did it. Yukiko Yamagishi vs. Philia from Skullgirls. High school girls who woke up one day with the uncanny ability to control their hair and use it in combat. Never played Skullgirls, but this seems to be Yukiko's most popular matchup, even though she loses. The only other option I can think of for Yukiko is the Wedgie Woman from Captain Underpants, but that's just too cursed even for this list. Shigeki Oyengu versus Captain Olimar from Pikmin. They're short, bald characters who command a tiny army of creatures to collect resources and fight off enemies. Olimar gets literally stomped in this fight unless we give him his star-destroying rocket. This is a horrible matchup, but I honestly cannot think of anything else for Shigeki. Akira Otoishi versus Todd Ingram from Scott Pilgrim. Self-centered secondary antagonists sporting the line of clever and stupid with psychic powers, and despite both of them being musicians with powers, those two factors aren't connected in any way. The last reason is primarily why I chose this matchup. I honestly don't know who wins. Todd is way stronger, but Akira is faster and could easily just drag Todd into an electrical grid and fry him. But what I do know is that I want to have a moment with the two of them having a guitar versus bass battle. Todd uses his psychic powers to amplify his equipment, sending sparks of electricity over to Akira for Red Hot Chili Peppers to absorb and power himself up, causing the music venue that they're playing in to explode on itself, and the two just start playing a melody together. It's just... that'd be amazing. Yoshikage Kira versus Toru Adachi from Persona 4. Quiet and average men from quiet and average towns who are the center of a serial killer mystery and defeated by a ragtag group of high schoolers. This is Kira's most popular matchup, so I won't waste too much time on it. Adachi and Kira both have ways to one-shot each other, Adachi with his superior raw power and Kira with his first bomb. Fight Stardust could also allow Kira to take the win by taking the fight back outside the TV world, where Kira pretty much just instantly wins against Adachi since he doesn't have his persona. But it also leaves himself wide open when using it. Could go either way, probably, and is better than Giorno vs. Joker. Speaking of which, Giorno Giovanna vs. Kemijo Toma from a certain magical index. Teenage idealist with average physical power, but with enough hacks to cancel out any enemy attack. Apparently Giorno's closest fight with Gold Experience Requiem, even if he still loses, because Kemijo's Imagine Breaker just nullifies any supernatural phenomenon, and it can act passively. Bruno Bucciolati vs. Trafalgar Law from One Piece. Members of an underground criminal organization with spatial manipulation powers who start off as antagonists but quickly join the protagonists in their journey, or at least ally with them, I should say. I don't know much about Law, I haven't gotten there yet in One Piece, but this seems to be a fan favorite. The only thing Bruno has in this fight is Sticky Fingers possibly being faster, maybe invisible, and entering pocket dimensions that Law might not be able to control with a rune. But with how Law's Devil Fruit works, I'm not sure that's going to be much of an issue anyway. Guido Mista vs. Kara Jin from League of Legends. Skilled gunmen and assassins who have a strange fixation on the number 4. I really don't have much to say about this one besides Mista literally cannot lose this fight if it takes place during Golden Wind. Any other time he gets foreshadowed. Narancia Girga vs. Coco Adele from Ruby. The flashy team members who specialize in heavy artillery and area scanning. The only other matchup I could find for Narancia was Rigby just because their voices were similar. I didn't really like this matchup at first because I didn't see the connections as very deep, but it kind of started to grow on me. Coco maybe wins because her semblance makes her shots stronger, and as a Ruby character she should have better physical feats than a long-range stand user. Panakata Fugo vs. Akame from Akame Ga Kill. Assassins wielding toxic one-shot abilities who grew up as exceptional children, became a traitor to their team, and they have a power-up that makes them deadlier after they accepted their inner demons. Akame should still win, even if we gave Fugo Purple Haze Distortion, because leaving an after image and stops time is faster than melting a person entirely before they can feel regret. Trish Una vs. Rock Howard from Fatal Fury. Children of powerful gang leaders who seek vengeance against their father's misdeeds, while still harboring a little bit of their evil in them. I don't know much about Fatal Fury or King of Fighters, but this is Trish's go-to matchup. I honestly don't see anything wrong with it beyond the fact that Trish loses horribly, but if the fight starts with Trish calling Rock smelly or something, that'd be hilarious and make up for all of it. Diavolo vs. Kurumi Tokisaki from Date A Live. Unhinged and psychotic killers with time powers, foresight, and are associated with the color crimson. Don't know anything about Date A Live, but Kurumi seems to be stronger and more durable than Diavolo and has a wider arsenal. But said arsenal drains her life force the more she uses it. King Crimson doesn't, so Diavolo could probably stall her out? Maybe? Yates made a track for this one and it's pretty good, go check it out, I don't have anything else to say. Jolene Cujo vs. Mayday Parker from Marvel. Daughters of some of the most recognizable comic book heroes who have the ability to sling string. I don't know who wins, and I really don't care since I like Spider-Man and Stone Ocean a lot. Oh, and this is probably the point where I call out my friend Mitchell as an unapologetic tomboy lover who just wants a boyfriend with tits. Yeah, sorry, I don't make the rules, man. Hermes Costello vs. Nico Robin from One Piece. Wanted criminals on the lam who can duplicate body parts through touch. Nico just wins. I don't care what the stats say for Kiss, Nico wins. It's hard finding a good matchup for this character though. God damn, I was lucky to even think of this one. Narcisco Anasui vs. Kazuichi Soda from Danganronpa. Tinkerers with a disturbing criminal past and are hopelessly in love with a girl who likes the mysterious brooding character over them. That's pretty much what they all have in common. I guess they have pink hair. Kazuichi gets his face punched in from the inside out. Weather Report vs. Rain from Mortal Kombat. They were separated from their rich and powerful families at a young age and seek to avenge their loved ones who were killed by the main antagonist. They were also named after music. They control the weather with a hint of mind manipulation as well. I don't know who wins, probably Weather Report via Snail Hacks, but it's more fair than Weather vs. Storm, and that's based. Enrico Pucci vs. Homura Akemi from Madoka Magica. Time-manipulating characters that aren't really good or evil, who reset the series' timeline for the person closest to them. I've never seen Madoka Magica, but apparently they can scale above Sailor Moon, so rip Pucci. I'd really wish they do something really emotionally powerful with the timeline resets, particularly parallel the ending of Stone Ocean. Oh, and if they don't have Whitesnake take Homura's gun and use it against her, then it's an automatic 0 out of 10 episode. Johnny Joestar vs. Richter Belmont from Castlevania. While I personally prefer Johnny Joestar vs. Edward Elric, which I should probably do a video on sometime, this isn't a half-bad matchup either. They are the 7th member of an iconic bloodline with rotten luck, and brought disdain to their family name, and they also chase down a important corpse. And like his alternate universe counterparts matchup, Johnny is actually pretty close to Richter in terms of stats. There's some debate on what's canon for Richter and whether or not alternate Diego's the world is as strong as the original, which can affect the outcome, but in each case it's usually agreed that Johnny wins, it's just not how. Gyro Zappelli vs. Kamina from Gurren Lagann. Idealist and badass mentors to a wimpy protagonist, training them in a form of rotation as a power before their tragic deaths, giving them one last piece of recurring advice before they learn the power of infinity. I have never seen Gurren Lagann, but this would be a banger episode, like All Might vs. Might Guy levels of hype and tragedy. And that fight's really close, just like this one. Kamina's just on par with Gyro with his sword, but is susceptible to most of spin techniques and lacks speed. But in Gurren, he gets a huge attack and defense boost, as well as resistance to the spin, but Gyro's Ball Breaker solely exists to bypass any defense, so it's really interesting to see how this fight would play out. And I'd be more interested in to see what a track for this fight would be like. Diego Brando vs. Leone from Akame ga Kill. Blondes who have the ability to turn themselves into two of the most ferocious hunters in history, the Raptor and the Lion. Diego's only other good matchup was Riptor, and he was one of the first characters used in Death Battle, so that's a bust. Leone wins on account of being an Akame ga Kill character, but Diego has way more uses from scary monsters than Leone ever had with Lionel, such as being able to fossilize people. And maybe he could keep up with her because his vision's based on sights? That's a stretch, but it's not impossible. Alternate World of Diego versus Kara from Undertale. Alternate universe counterparts with time manipulation powers that are more malicious than their original counterparts. Also knives. The only matchup I've seen for alternate Diego was Dio from Part 3, and that's lame as hell. So this one's at least clever, but Kara still wins because she's a reality destroyer apparently. Funny Valentine versus Steven Armstrong from Metal Gear Rising. Bet you didn't see this one coming. Antagonist American politicians from absurd Japanese media with views arguably more just than the protagonist, and have their powers drawn from their unique hearts. What can I say about this one? It's the most popular matchup with both of them, though I think most people realized it's an easy Valentine win and stopped caring immediately after that. I would hope the banter's really good though, since their monologues and their stories are just fantastic. Josuke Higashikata vs. Garnet from Steven Universe. Yeah, remember when I said original Josuke didn't have any good matchups left? I kinda lied. Although I do prefer Josuke from Part 8 going up against Garnet, since they're both fusions of two entities with elemental powers who could fight a race of super rock people and live on the beach. I'm not entirely sure who wins. Garnet should have superior physical abilities, but Josuke's soap bubbles have so much hacks from plundering to straight up matter erasure that it could probably go either way. Would love to see a vocal track with this one though, especially in the style of Stronger Than You. Joshu Higashikata vs. Misogi Kumigawa from Medaka Box. Perverted loser teenagers who despise the protagonist for being superior to them, and are known for summoning bolts and screws in combat. Joshu literally has nothing in this fight. Misogi is regarded as one of the most broken characters in Medaka Box, if not all of anime. If you want something less stompy, then have him fight Zenitsu from Demon Slayer or something, I don't know. Finally, we reach Over Heaven Dio. Now there's a lot of characters out there that could work as an opponent, but many of them are just too bland for me. A lot of them focus too much on the reality warping aspect of this Dio, so I opted to pair him up against someone who has more in common with his character and less with his powers.
Overheaven Dio versus Fused Zamasu from Dragon Ball. Anime antagonists from alternate timelines that disregard mortals and ascended into godhood thanks to an ally willing to join with them, and also can travel through time and space, reshaping timelines as they please. Novel Cars is probably a more thematic JoJo matchup for Zamasu, since their space-time powers are more similar, and they actually fused with alternate versions of themselves. But I think it works well enough for Ascended Dio, since every other match for him is pretty much just has a connection of, I'm OP as hell, I can control reality, and reality includes time, and it's just boring. It's just boring, but with Zamasu versus Dio, we have a character who is just infinitely powerful physically, and a character who's infinitely powerful hacks-wise. So, it'd be interesting to see how the choreography for a fight like this would go out.
That was one death battle for every Eyes of Heaven character. JoJo has a lot of weird characters and abilities, so finding proper opponents without going to the same well more than twice was definitely a challenge. Probably didn't help that I'm not as familiar with as many franchises that most of the Versus community is, but this list featured 20 new franchises for Death Battle to use, and hey, I only went to that same well 9 times out of 50. Not too shabby. I hope you enjoyed this video that's longer than it needed to be. If you have your own take on a fight I mentioned, a better matchup for someone, or even a new list like this one you want, then let me know in the comments below. Oh, and one more thing. I have another Death Battle list video in the works, so be sure you stick around and look out for it, because I think it's something you're gonna enjoy.